I don't want to say anything, but we didn't have to have too many takes to get a shot before Pastor John missed one. May have been a one-take wonder on that one. But, we had this idea in the States of an armchair quarterback. We're going to kind of look at that a little bit this morning, but I want to welcome those of you at our other campuses as well as our online viewers this morning. If you are new here, my name is Stu. I am the Arcade campus pastor, and I had the privilege of leading a team to the Dominican just a few weeks ago, and that's what I want to share a little bit about with you today. And as I said, we have this idea in the States about a thing called an armchair quarterback. They're the person that knows what should have happened in the play. And even though we call it an armchair quarterback, it's really not just for football. I'm sure they would have said, Pastor John, you got to tuck that elbow in, maybe bend your knees, follow through. They could have coached them exactly how to make that shot, But they're willing to put in their pointers, put in their 2 cents, but they aren't in there doing the dirty work. They aren't out on the field making the play. They're kind of watching from afar. And as I was thinking about that, I thought, there's no such thing as an armchair quarterback when it comes to missions. No such thing. You have to be part of the game. Pastor Jeremy kind of coined a phrase or a quote, I guess, that when we were planning for this trip last year, that said, some people are going to play, some are going to pray, and some are going to pay. But everybody's going to do something. Everybody's going to be part of the trip. And that's kind of the way it is. That's the way it was in this last trip. Some of us played, some of us went, and we went on the trip. And we're going to share a little bit about that today, about what we had a chance to do. Some of you prayed. Let me tell you how important it was for you to pray. And many of you may not even know this, but your prayers were definitely important for us for protection. The day that we arrived in the Dominican actually was supposed to be election day. And political tensions were very high. Because of the election, there were some questions of honesty and integrity. And so there were a lot of questions about that with the election. And it was the first time they were going to do digital election, digital voting. And about halfway through the day, it was found that it wasn't working. Whether it was technical difficulties or whether it was tampering, who knows? But it was pretty obvious that it wasn't working. And tensions were very high. In fact, early in the afternoon, they canceled the election. As you can imagine, that did not calm anyone's hearts. And I was constantly getting emails from the embassy to stay safe, avoid public places, busy public places, stay away from polling sites, avoid any riots or any demonstrations or anything like that. Let me tell you, we stayed at a hotel there. From our hotel, we could see a polling site. We were right downtown in Santo Domingo. So there was some question about safety. So I truly appreciate your prayers and that you were able to pray for us and keep us safe. And I honestly believe that is one of the reasons we had absolutely no safety issues while we were there, was because of those prayers. But then some of you paid for us to go. Some of you did all three, but some of you paid for us to go. And let me tell you, thank you so much for the money you gave. Some of you, when you give to Crosstown on a regular basis, this is some of what you support. Some of what you support is teams like this being able to go on a mission trip. So thank you for doing that. Some of you gave specifically to the trip, and I want to say thank you for that. You have no idea the impact that had on our people. But nobody is an armchair quarterback when it comes to missions. Everybody has to have a role in that. Today I want to talk a little bit about some of the things we went to accomplish while we were there. When we went down, we actually had 4 objectives, I guess you could say, we wanted to accomplish. 4 goals that we wanted to accomplish on this trip. Number 1, we wanted to represent Crosstown well. We wanted to represent our church well and our country well in the Dominican. The other thing we wanted to do, we wanted to spread the gospel to as many people as we had the opportunity to do. The third thing we wanted to do, we wanted to bless Brandon and Bethany Nutter and their kids. We wanted to spoil them a little bit, and we had the opportunity to do that. And then the fourth thing we wanted to do, we wanted to come alongside the local church down there. And we wanted to help them with physical work, but also outreach and encouragement. And so that's kind of what I want to talk a little bit about this morning. Basically, to boil that all down, what we wanted to do was we wanted to serve. We wanted to be servants while we were there. And you know, it's funny. We talked about that beforehand, and then that word came up many different times while we were in the Dominican. Serving, the idea of being a servant, all those things. I think it was the first night we were there. Brandon was doing kind of our orientation with us, and Brandon said, people often want to serve until they're treated like a servant. So true, isn't it? Everybody wants to serve right up until that time when somebody treats you like a servant. And it's not so much fun anymore. And Brandon went on to say, he said, this week you will have an opportunity to be a servant. And we did. That is so true. That's what I want to share a little bit today is kind of how do we do that? How do we serve while we were there? If you've been reading along the reading plan, it's funny, you read just this past week about Jesus serving. What an example he is of a servant. In John 13, Jesus had washed the disciples' feet, and then this is kind of the tail end of that passage. We're going to start in verse 12. John 13, verse 12. It says, when he had washed their feet, he, Jesus, had washed their feet and put on his outer garments and resumed his place, he said to them, do you understand what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example, that you also should do just as I have done to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. Jesus set the example for us of how to serve. He humbled himself. Think about that. Jesus, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the one who simply spoke and created everything we know, humbled himself to become the lowest of all servants. And he humbled himself to wash the disgusting, dirty, smelly, dusty feet of his disciples. And not only did he just do that, he implores us, do the same. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. You saw what I did, now step out and do it. That is the idea of serving. And that was the idea that we kind of had as we went down. How do we serve like that? How do we serve like Jesus? So today, hopefully, I can show you a little bit of our goals we tried to do and how we served in completing those goals. Number one, as I said, we wanted to represent our church and our country well to everybody we came in contact with. And we did that in many ways. We did that in our dealings with the hotel staff. We stayed at a hotel down there. It was not an American hotel in the Dominican. It was a Dominican hotel that we stayed at. And our dealings with the staff there, we represented our country and our church well. We did that with members of the church. You saw in the video, we had some time to shoot some baskets, have some fun. We just spent time with our brothers and sisters. But we also did it. We represented our country well. To this guy here, I want to introduce you to a guy named Daniel. If you can put that picture up. This is Danielle. This is the first contractor that we worked with down there. It's a contractor that the church had hired, and he was a mason, and he was the one in charge of doing all the concrete work and organizing it. But there were some issues with Daniel. He was not particularly happy working with volunteers. I think that Daniel thought that he was going to have masons to work with, people that knew concrete work like him. And we may have had an idea of what to do working with concrete, but we had the American idea. And they do things a little different in the Dominican sometimes. So there was a little challenge there. So he was not overly happy with working with volunteers. He wasn't really happy with the plans, apparently. The church had plans, had blueprints for what they were doing, and apparently they butt heads a little bit about how it should be done, what should be done, and so he wasn't real happy with the plans for the building. But really, I think one of the big problems was he wasn't real happy working with Americans. And if you put yourself in his shoes, you can't really blame him in a way. See, Americans don't have a very good reputation in the Dominican. They have a reputation for being know-it-alls and being lazy. The kind of person that comes in, tells you you're doing it wrong and you need to do it this way, but then they never lift a hand to help you do that. So those were kind of some of our challenges as we worked with Daniel. But we worked alongside him and we served him. I had multiple members of the team that mentioned to me they felt that Darrell Church was instrumental in how he ministered to Daniel. He worked tirelessly alongside this man and tried to think what his next step was and have that tool ready or that block ready or whatever he needed. He worked hard to make sure Daniel had what he needed. Wasn't always easy, especially when they don't speak the same language. But I think he had a huge impact on Daniel. And you could see it as the day went on. As the day went on, he even smiled, even chuckled a few times towards the end of the day. And we had made an impact on him. There was a man from the church that knew there were some struggles and some tension there, and he was one of the leaders of the church, and he was a lawyer also. His name was Victor. And he came from work directly to the church to help. And as I said, he was a lawyer. He came from work. He had his dress pants on. He had his dress shoes on. He took off his dress shirt and worked in his t-shirt. And I don't mean work like he stood back and pointed, do this, do that. He was in there in the work. I remember seeing him later hosing the concrete off his dress shoes, trying to clean it off his dress pants. Victor knew the idea of serving. And so he stepped in, he served. The other thing we wanted to do down there was we wanted to spread the gospel to as many people as we had the opportunity to do. And mainly we accomplished this in doing prayer walks. I think we have a picture here of the prayer walk of, you can see kind of a typical street, and you see Tony there in the foreground, and the church people are with us, and they're leaning into the porch and yelling, "Salulu," which is basically, hello, welcome. It's a greeting, to see if anybody would respond and let us into their house, to go and to pray with them, to share our story with them. It's hard to know sometimes how much impact you have. You're working through a translator. You don't always understand the questions they're asking back, especially if the translator doesn't translate it back to you. And sometimes it's hard to know the impact that you have. But I can tell you that we are going to see a lady named Juana and a man named Diogenes in heaven because of those prayer walks. There are 2 lives for sure that were changed because of those prayer walks. They accepted Christ while we were on those prayer walks. And that doesn't count the many others where seeds were sown. I met a lady named Luciana and her family. They invited us into their house, and we went into the house and we sat and talked, and I bet you there was 5 or 6 of them in her family. We all gathered around and we chatted, and I shared with them my story and talked with them, and we were able to give them a Bible, a Spanish Bible. They were so happy to have a Bible that they could read. And while they weren't sure about accepting Christ yet, we had a chance of inviting them to church. We had church people from the church with us. We had a chance of inviting them to church. And they were actually having an event the next night. Not that evening, but the next evening they were having an event at the church. And later on, I was talking with one of our translators. His name was Wander. Great young man. And I was talking to Wander, and he said, guess what? She was at church that next night. Her and another member of her family were at church that next night. So I'm praying that she's going to trust Christ someday, if she hasn't already. God was at work in those prayer walks. You could see people's lives changed, but I could also see the lives of the team changed as they were out on the prayer walks as well. We had the opportunity to go. This church that we worked at, they had actually planted a church about an hour out of the city. And we got to go out to a village and do a prayer walk out in the village that day. And it was great to see the difference between the city life versus the village life. It truly is almost a story of the haves and the have-nots. The houses in the city, so different than the houses in the village. We got to go into the little village church that was meager and small and full of love. And got to have a moment with the church gathered there, the church people. What a great day that was. To be able to do the work of Christ in the city as well as out in the village. The other reason we went down was we wanted to bless Brandon and Bethany and the kids. I think there's a picture of the kids here. It's amazing how old they're getting, having seen them a few years now and getting to spend time with them. And you know, we wanted to assist them in whatever we could do to make their ministry successful. One of the things we did, we took a bunch of candy for the kids. What better way to please kids than to take them candy? You know, it's funny. I was talking with Bethany, and she was saying that there's certain candies they can't get in the Dominican. You can't get Twizzlers. You can't get Mike and Ike's in the Dominican. Some of the kids' favorites. So we took candy down to spoil the kids, and they loved it. Bethany was telling me that Andrew had said, the middle son, had said the one night, I knew that I liked the people from Crosstown, but now they might be my favorite. But you know, as parents, we know, if you bless the kids, you bless the parents. And Brandon and Bethany were so pleased that we loved on their kids and blessed their kids. We also took some coffee for Brandon and Bethany, some treats for them to bless them as well. But they've had a hard time. They've had a hard time with this transition of going back to Santo Domingo. This is a new place for them. They had been in Santiago, then they were home, now they're back in Santo Domingo. And this is a new area for them, and they really thought it would be a pretty easy transition, but it has not been that easy. In fact, I'll let Brandon tell you about it in his own words. If you go ahead and play that here.
Hey Crosstown, it's so great to be able to share a moment with you all. I'm so thankful for your team that's come down here this week to work alongside of us. Really, as we get started in a completely new city, I think for my wife and I, we thought moving cities would just be a quick 2-minute transition, no big deal. It's been a little more challenging than that, and so it's been really nice to have some familiar faces, a church that we can count on and trust that's really at our side. We're really thankful for all of you and for all the work that your team's done this week to help one of our local Alliance churches, but also to help us and come and encourage us. So be encouraged, and we hope to see each one of you here at some point in the future.
What a blessing it is to be able to work alongside such a wonderful couple. I just love Brandon and Bethany. They are such great people. And like I said, it's such an honor to be able to work alongside them and to be able to be part of their ministry there in the Dominican. The other reason we wanted to go down was we wanted to come alongside the local church and assist them with remodeling, encourage them, and help with outreach to help build up the church down there. And realistically, this is where we spent most of our time. We spent most of our time working alongside and playing alongside the local church. We helped to paint the exterior of the building. And we also did a bunch of exterior work on the front of the church. The buildings are very interesting down there. and it needed, it's amazing what a facelift it was to put some paint on the building. But you know, the best part of it was, yes, we got some work done, but was the encouragement to the church. I want to introduce you to the pastor there. Jose Pichardo is his name. And what a great leader he is. And he had a little video of him, and he just kind of shares the encouragement to the church. So if you go ahead and play that, Aaron.
Hola.
Hello.
Yo soy Josué Pichardo,
My name is Jose Pichardo.
pastor de esta iglesia, Buen Pastor.
I'm the pastor here at this church called Buen Pastor.
Les mando desde aquí un saludo muy caluroso,
Send a greeting from here, a loving message to you all.
pidiendo que ustedes tienen grandes personas
We sent a really great group of people
con lo que tenemos aquí que hemos compartido por una semana.
that we've been able to share a week together here at the church.
Bendiciones abundantes de parte de nosotros y del Señor.
Send an abundant blessing to all of you from here at the church here. Bye-bye.
What a great man that is. Great story. That he's actually second generation pastor there. His father started that church, and we got to meet his father. His father was instrumental in the Alliance Church in the Dominican as a whole, and just a great man. So it's really neat to be able to work alongside there. And I have to admit, one of the things that really excited me about that church was some of the young people that were involved in the church. We spent time, got to hang out with, there was about 4 different young men, 18, 19, 20-year-old men, that are the future leaders of this church. We got to have some fun with them. They taught me how to say some cool things in Spanish. And but they were helping with worship, leading worship. And it's easy to see Pastor Jose is teaching these young men and discipling these young men to be the future leaders of that church. And that was so exciting for me to watch that. But as I said, we did a lot of work on the physical building of the church to try to make it more accessible, to make it look nicer. You know, it's kind of funny how here we are in the middle of remodeling Greece. Doing all the work at Greece to try to make it look nice, make it accessible for people, make it welcoming for people. And we went to the Dominican and did the exact same thing. Yeah, the building looked a little different. The work was a little different, but it was the same thing in mind. I think we have some pictures of the outside of the building, and you can kind of see what it looked like before it was painted. You can see there's bare concrete, and this is kind of from the back corner of the church. And the sign up on the top, looking kind of worn and kind of tattered. And we had the opportunity to just start working and painting it. And so I think we have some pictures kind of in process and working. We covered over the old sign, painted over the old sign to re-letter it. And the problem was we didn't have a ladder that we could reach from the ground up. So we had to go up on the roof and lean over the side and try to paint it. And I've never tried to paint letters upside down, but it was not an easy task. And but they were able to do that. And you can see it looks so much nicer with the building painted, and that bright red really made it pop and really just looked so nice. The building looked so nice. But you know, the cool thing is, yes, we're working on the building. Yes, we're doing the physical labor stuff, but outreach was still part of that as well. It was neat. We're working away, and this girl comes up, and I look over, and she's painting on the wrought iron. I think we have a picture of the girl. Yeah, this girl here, painting on the wrought iron. And I remember seeing her, and I thought, must be that's just one of the girls from the church. I hadn't met her, didn't recognize her, but there's a lot of people at the church that, so I just figured it's a girl from the church. Come to find out, later I realized that she wasn't from the church. She'd never been to the church there. She was walking down the street. Apparently she was going to university, and her class was canceled. And so she was walking down the street, and we had music playing, and of course a bunch of people around working, and so she kind of stopped to see what was going on. And these young men that I had mentioned earlier are talking to her. Some of our young people talking to her, and next thing you know, they invited her, and she stops, and she's helping paint at the church. She doesn't attend that church yet, or at least she didn't. Who knows? Maybe today she does. Just amazing to see outreach happening in the middle of the work. And as I said, it wasn't all hard work. We did shoot a few baskets, a little bit. We did spend some time hanging out with people from the church. A couple of our ladies had an opportunity to spend some time in the kitchen with some of their ladies one day. And every day, the ladies of the church would feed us. So we had traditional Dominican meals every day for lunch. And so we had a couple of the days that a couple of our ladies got to go in the kitchen and helped and hang out with these ladies. And at one point, I looked in and they're all sitting around the table drinking coffee and communicating or trying to communicate. Some didn't speak English, some didn't speak Spanish, but there's something about the family of God. When they get together, there was communion there together. It was so cool to be able to spend time together like that. One of the big things that we did was we worked on the construction at the front of the building. There's a big stone or a big concrete wall along the sidewalk, probably 6-8 feet tall, and then up behind that was the church. And you had to kind of walk up a driveway and then into the doors of the church. And so they're trying to make it more accessible and more open. So their big goal is to put an addition off the front of the church and then put stairs going down, bust through that concrete wall, and put stairs going up. You can see here, this is kind of the front of the church, and you can just kind of see between the pillars, there's some wood back there. That's actually, we installed new glass doors, and that's going to be the new entrance for the church. And behind that concrete wall in there, one day we poured concrete in there. Now let me tell you, pouring concrete in the Dominican does not mean you wave the truck back and you put the chute in. What it means is you mix concrete on the ground. You mix concrete, mix the sand, mix the stone, mix the concrete mix with water on the ground, and then you shovel it in the wheelbarrows or shovel it in the hole. It takes a lot of work to mix concrete by hand to fill that. This is kind of the other part of the entry. You can see the guy waving. That's the concrete wall that needs to be busted out. And there's going to be stairs going down to the sidewalk there. And you can see those other two big holes. We spent a lot of time digging holes. Dug out those two big holes. Those are for pillars that are going to be uprights in the church to hold the roof going out over the steps. We did a lot of work there. I think there's some pictures from up above, and it kind of gives you an idea of the size of the area and the holes. Those are from the roof. But we had a chance to work alongside our Dominican brothers in digging holes and pouring concrete and mixing concrete, taking rebar and building framework for the pillars. They have done a lot of work out front there. But it's been a long, slow process. They have the workers. Where they struggle is getting money to buy supplies. They worked very hard to make sure that we had enough supplies to work with while we were there. But then getting other supplies is difficult for them. And their plan is they're committed to finish the project. They'd like to do it sooner, but as the money comes in, they're going to keep working and keep finishing the project. That's where we get to come in. That's where we get to partner with our brothers and sisters at Buen Pastor Church in Santo Domingo. That's why this morning we're going to take a love offering. Their goal is they've raised more money, they have some more money, and they are about $2,000 American dollars short of finishing the project. So that's why hopefully we can help take up some of that shortcoming. So I would ask you to pray, consider how you can give to help finish the work at this church. If you're in a building, if you want to give in the offering, if you just take an offering envelope and write on that offering envelope, DR Love Gift. That way our counters will know exactly where that's supposed to go. You write DR Love Gift on that envelope, and then that money will go to meet that need. If you're watching online, as I know many people are this morning, if you're watching online and you want to give online, we've got that set up. Just go to our website, crosstownalliance.com, click on the Give button, and when you put the information in, there's a drop down, and you can click DR Love Gift, and you can give right online. Give to that love gift. It's such an honor to be able to partner with Brandon and Bethany, as well as this church in the Dominican. It would be such an encouragement to them to be able to help them finish the project. And honestly, I can't wait to go down again in another year or two and see the work that's been done. And I hope to come back with pictures of the finished project for you all. So as I said before, you can't be an armchair missionary. You have to be part of the game, part of the team. You can play. Talked about the trip that we were just on, the things that we accomplished. You know, I told the team before we went, this is not a vacation. This is like a military mission. In fact, we went down, we had a job to do. In fact, we had 4 jobs to do. We had 4 things we wanted to accomplish. And we needed to work hard to complete that mission in the time that we had. We had the opportunity to play. We had the opportunity to be part of the team and went. I'm sure we'll be taking another team in the future. And I would encourage you, be praying about it. If that's something you're interested in, be praying about it. Be preparing so you can have an opportunity to play and go on the next team when we go again. Talked about how people were praying for us and the absolute importance of people praying for us. So needed. And I would encourage you, keep praying. Keep praying for Brandon and Bethany. Keep praying for the rest of their Envision team. Honestly, they have a lot of work to do, and they don't have enough people to do the work. They are looking for interns and people that are willing to go down and become part of the team, whether it's for 6 months, for 2 years. They're doing a couple 2-month things over the summer, internships. There's opportunities there to serve. They need people. Keep praying for Pastor Jose and the Buen Pastor Church. Pray that they would be able to finish the work. Pray for them to be able to reach their community. They have a heart to reach their community for the Lord. Pray for them. Keep praying for Juana and Diogenes, that they would grow in their faith as they plug into the church. Keep praying for people like Luciana and all those like her where seeds are planted. And I pray that they would just come to know Christ more and trust Him for the forgiveness of their sins. Pray for the Dominican Republic as a country. They had rescheduled their election, and I believe their election is today. I have not heard yet. I was texting with Brandon this morning, actually, and I have not heard yet how it's going, what's happening. But pray for their country. With the political upheaval, you don't know what's going to happen. And there's an opportunity, a chance, just like it's happened many other places around the world, that if things change with the government, Brandon and Bethany may be sent out and not be able to continue their work in the Dominican. So pray for the government there. Pray for the country that will remain peaceful. I also mentioned that we can pay. And that's what I'm asking you today. For some of you, that's the easiest thing to do. That's the easiest part of it for some of you. For some of you, that's the hardest part, and I understand that completely. We have a unique opportunity to be part of that church. And we can help finish the construction. Finish the construction there. Whatever you do, whatever role you take in missions, take that role as a servant. Being willing to serve Christ in all you do, whatever it is. If it means washing feet, wash feet the best you can. If it means mixing concrete, do the best job you can do at mixing concrete, or digging holes, or sharing your faith with others. Whatever it is you're called to do, serve well in that. Let's pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the work that you're doing in the Dominican. We thank you for Brandon and Bethany. Thank you for their love for you, their desire to serve you. Lord, I pray for the Envision DR. I pray that you would give them the strength, give them the workers that they need to be able to complete the work you've called them to. Lord, I pray for Pastor Jose and for all those at the Buen Pastor Church. I pray, Lord, that you would strengthen them, give them encouragement, let them know they're loved and they're prayed for. I pray that you would help them to continue to work hard to spread your gospel throughout that community. And Lord, I lift up Juana and Diogenes, Luciana, and all the others, Lord, that we had opportunity to share with on the prayer walks, and the church members that we got to share with working. I pray, Lord, you would draw them closer to you. Help them to grow in their faith. Help them to trust you if that's what they need. Lord, we lift up the whole country of the Dominican. Pray, Lord, that your work would be done there and that you would help others to come to know you through it all. We thank you. We praise you. In Jesus' name, amen.